that you collected your stuff earlier today. And Standing Orders Report number 2 addresses 2 emergency motions that were received in the last couple of days. And the decision has been agreed that the 2 motions would be accepted. Emergency motion number 1 is from Cork South Central. Emergency number 2 is from Labour Disability. And we're proposing that those motions would be taken tomorrow as part of motion number 1 during plenary session number 4 on education, and number 6 tomorrow under the equality plenary session. I so move motion, Standing Orders number 2. Thank you.
Great. So Standing Orders Report number 2 is adopted. So just moving into our next session then, which is plenary session 3. We're dealing with 3 distinct areas here again this afternoon. So the first area we'll be dealing with immigration and integration, followed by justice. And Deputy Aodhán Ó Ríordáin is our party spokesperson for both those areas. And then the last area we'll come to under session 3 this afternoon is around agriculture and rural affairs. And we'll be joined by Deputy Alan Kelly in relation to that section. So just moving straight into the business of conference, moving to motion 27 under the section of immigration and integration. I'll take a mover for motion 27. It's a composite motion from the Fitzgerald Kearney branch, the Portobello branch, Dublin Bay South, and the new Ross branch. So in the same way that we've carried through with conference this morning, I'll take a mover, a seconder, and then we'll take each motion and follow that order, and then we'll have a composite debate then at the end in relation to that before we invite the party spokesperson to respond. So a mover then for motion 27, Eddie McGuinness.
Hello everyone, my name is Eddie McGuinness. I am part of the Fitzgerald Kearney branch in Portobello, and I'm a new candidate for Dublin Bay South. The reason I'm proposing this motion today is very, very simple. I've been an activist for over 30 years. I've been a community activist for over 30 years. I have believed in my journey of what Labour has been all about. And that is key to who I'm about, and that's why I'm standing forward as a candidate. But most importantly, Labour has always valued equality, solidarity and fairness in all Irish society, no matter where you come from and who you are. The conference, with increasing levels of fake news, false narratives around the immigration issue here in Ireland. And that is actually being generated by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, not giving us the correct communications of what is happening. But most importantly, going forward, we have to commend my colleagues and comrades in D6 and D4 with their initiatives around welcoming groups, which were set up earlier this year with Dermot Lacey and Ivana Bacik, our leader. It's talking to communities, and it's all about bringing communities together and communicating who they are and what they are. We need to, as a party, challenge the disinformation about immigration, similarly to that's done around the referendum, because most information out there is false. The far right has come forward to try and, in a way, sorry, I feel passionate about this area. The far right have come up and shoved narratives in all people's faces and making sure that they themselves don't come true to the key messages. We need a referendum-style communications, COVID information like the ones with leaflets, information's going out there. For us, inclusion in Labour election manifesto of a strong, committed and supporting the development of integration and that effort in communities nationwide, not just here in Dublin, not just in towns and cities, but also in all urban and rural areas in Ireland. And that's why I commend this motion to the floor.
Thanks, Eddie. So is there a seconder for motion 27?
Hi, Bradeen Ling Maloney, the New Ross branch, and a candidate for the election in the New Ross district. Conference in December 2019, the Australian government announced measures to combat the dangerous, fake, false narrative around the rollout of communication of facilities of 5G in their country. This factual, non-biased information assisted in allaying the major concerns of the Australian citizens, and the factual evidence overtook the narrative. We see the danger all over our country, all over our communities, of unsubstantiated stories flying around on social media, mainly from the far right. However, in this week's most recent surveys, we see that the actuality is that over 70% of Irish people are positive about immigration. In my own work, I work every day with migrants, and I see the pain that the fake narrative creates. Following our own Labour Party policy on immigration and integration, we must roll out dedicated information campaigns to inform all our communities of the positive aspects of migration and fully and completely debunk the myths, misinformation and base racism that exists in what we know are small bases of our communities. Conference, I ask you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Bradeen. So moving then to motion 28 in the name of Labour Intercultural. A mover, Annie.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone again. I actually lost my speech when I was coming up here. I lost my piece of paper, so forgive me. So, first of all, this is close to my heart when it comes to racism, integration, and immigration. As a migrant woman standing before you, I call racism the current cancer in our society. I'll call it as it is. It affects so many people in so many ways that a lot of people will not understand, especially if you do not experience it yourself. It is something that absolutely breaks you down in terms of your own person, the person that you are, and what you can bring to the table from the Irish community. So with this conference, Labour Party acknowledges and that we hold steadfast in our determination to combat prejudice, racism, hate crimes in our society. The persistent reality of racism and prejudice is an absolute crime trait within our community. In addition to undetermining the ideas of justice and equality, this problem causes so many severe social, physical, financial harm to both individuals and our community. This conference recognizes the need for appropriate policies and actions, and that it is urgent, especially with recent incidences of arson, riots, protest, hate speech, graffiti, and so much more. We recognize that these incidences are not isolated. They persistently undermine our values of equality, justice, and inclusivity. Therefore, this conference mandates that the party take the following decisive actions, one of them being promoting awareness and education within our own party as well as our communities. We call upon each and every one of you as a representative, as a councillor, as a spokesperson, to no longer stand by and watch it happen. It is time to take action. It is time for you to actually be actively anti-racist. It is time that we actually launch a nationwide awareness campaign that will help people understand how hypocritical it is as an Irish as an Irish community to turn around and say, the people who are aware are out of this country, right, who are Irish. You're calling for them to be treated right, yet you treat the same people who are coming to this country to visit, to run away from prosecution, and to go through all that horribleness. And you stand here and say that you are not racist. Yet you will openly accept when somebody is being spat on, when the rooms and the houses are being burnt to the ground just because they're housing somebody that doesn't look like you. How hypocritical it is for the Irish community, not more than 500 years ago. In London and other places, you heard no Irish, no dogs, no blacks. How can you then stand there as an Irish person and say that it is okay for other people to go through what you were prosecuted for being Irish? I am a proud Irish and I am a proud African, and I call upon this conference and the Labour Party to continue standing strong and steadfast in fighting against this prejudice, and for most of all, for being the party that has always supported the migrants. Thank you.
Thanks, Annie. Is there a seconder for motion 28, but definitely how do you follow that in terms of Annie's contribution? So Councillor Brian McDonough formally seconding motion 28. Thanks, Annie. Would you like to speak to motion 28? Nope. Motion 29 then, apologies. Motion 29 in the name of Galway City West Branch. Thanks.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Chairman, comrades, colleagues, I want to say good afternoon to you all. My name is Helen Ogbu, and I'm from Galway, the city of Tribe, and I represent the new tribe. Thank you. Well, I'm here to talk about, to present a motion that is close to my heart because I see myself as an insider. I'm here to follow suit with my sister and my comrade here, and just to kind of talk about and move a motion to seek to address the pressing issues within our current immigration and asylum policies in Ireland. We know the Labour Party, rooted in the principles of fairness, justice, equity, and equality, must take a stance on ensuring humane and effective immigration practices that uphold the dignity and rights of individuals seeking refuge in our country. We all know the current state of immigration and asylum policies demands immediate attention. Just recently, we've seen the current accommodation crisis and also the human rights violation on people seeking refuge here in Ireland. How they have been housed in tents with no basic amenities, which is not fit for any human being. We all know they've come here to seek refuge. We forget about the mental trauma that they have passed through coming to Ireland, but then pushing them to further mental torture. So our system must prioritize compassion. We must prioritize efficiency and adherences to international human rights standards. It is essential to recognize the contributions of immigrants and asylum seekers to our society and acknowledge our shared responsibility in providing a safe haven for those fleeing persecution and an Ireland that works for all. So, to achieve this, I'm calling on the Labour Party, I'm calling on every one of you here to support the motion and for the Labour Party to resolve to lobby for immediate and comprehensive reforms to immigration and asylum policies in line with our party's values. To engage with stakeholders, including legal experts, NGOs, and affected communities to develop evidence-based and human-centered policies, and to work towards building a public discourse that emphasizes the positive contributions of immigrants and asylum seekers to our society. In conclusion, I call for this motion because it represents our commitment to justice, our commitment to compassion, our commitment to equality. And by advocating for a fair and humane immigration and asylum system, the Labour Party reaffirms its dedication to upholding the rights and dignity of all individuals, regardless of their immigration status. I ask you all to support this motion. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Is there a seconder for motion 29? To formally second, Lorna Fitzpatrick. Thanks, Lorna. So moving then to motion 30 in the name of the Leitrim Gralton branch. Bernie Linan.
Hi, I'm Bernie Linan of the Leitrim Gralton branch, and I'm standing as local election candidate in the Manorhamilton LEA. I'm fortunate enough to be in Ireland's loveliest county. And I'm proud to be a founder member of Leitrim for All. I'm also lucky enough to live in Ireland's loveliest village and to be a member of the Dromahair Welcomes You group. Sadly, our lovely village has been engaged for the last 18 months or so in arguments, sometimes rancorous, sometimes vicious, about proposals to accommodate asylum seekers or refugees in our local hotel, which has lain unloved for 15 years. Now refurbished, it's still empty, while human beings sleep in tents on our cold, wet streets. Some of the loudest voices in opposition to proposals to use our hotel have been local representatives. And they have been happy to use populist dog whistles. They've been happy to adopt and to amplify talking points belonging to the far right, under the guise of representing concerned citizens. Well, here's the news flash. We're all concerned citizens. We're all concerned about the places we live, but some of us are concerned about the values of tolerance and acceptance and inclusion and solidarity and common human decency. We find ourselves willing to welcome newcomers and work as a community to get the facilities and the services that we all need. But the people who value those principles don't protest outside buildings which are earmarked to house the vulnerable and the marginalised. But their voices deserve representation nonetheless. And we must provide that representation. We can do better, and we must do better. And I commend this motion to conference.
Thanks, Bernie. Is there a seconder looking to speak to motion 30? Is there someone to formally second motion 30? I see Dave Kitching. Thanks, Dave. So moving then to motion 31 in the name of the Louth constituency. So Councillor Emma Cutlip to move motion 31.
Thank you very much, Chair. Emma Cutlip, Councillor in Drogheda in the Louth constituency. Comrades, I note yesterday's publication of the Equality Attitudes Survey by the ESRI, which found that over 73% of Irish people feel positive about immigration. It warms my heart that still the vast majority of Irish people embody our reputation for a céad míle fáilte. Yet our statute book is tainted with mechanisms that ignore the heart of our nation and provide a lending hand to unscrupulous and greedy profiteers, enabling them to fast-track and entirely ignore planning, instead intended to ensure that homes are homely and hotels are hospitable. Because of the current government's inaction on ending direct provision and its reactionary responses to global instabilities, we have found ourselves told that there are no other options. This government couldn't proactively plan But they could enact statutory instruments within the Planning Acts to facilitate speculative purchases of properties in the full knowledge that they can be converted without planning permission to high-capacity, stack-'em-in accommodation centres. Yet our towns are awash with vacant and derelict properties where, if one cabinet member was willing to speak to the other, could fulfil a great deal of both our housing need and our international protection needs. But rather than collaborating across cabinet, this government perverts planning and sacrifices human dignity at every turn. International protection applicants seeking refuge from persecution and violence deserve more than a tent in the snow or a bunk living in the shadows of community outrage without basic means to live a life. They've no place to cook a family meal or kitchen table to eat it at. No couch to sit on, no place for children to play. Nowhere for more than a small suitcase of clothes, and no community. The Minister doesn't care, and even told me face to face that the government's own regulations for IPAS accommodation standards do not apply to such properties. More than €500 million was handed over to private IPAS contracts last year. When we consider that in Budget 24, 64 million was allocated to disability provisions, 242 million for homeless accommodation and 90 million for the retrofitting of social homes, it's clear that this isn't about what services to vulnerable people cost. It's about what big business profits demand for minimal services. According to planning applications and county development plans, these properties are intended to generate tourism which benefits communities and local economies. Government contracts are subverting the small shred of local democratic control that there is and facilitating the gutting of local economies, not to mention the abandonment of human dignity. We will not be bystanders to this injustice. We demand change, not just with whispers of complacency, but with a roar of righteous indignation, because in the end, it is not just the fate of those seeking refuge that hangs in the balance, it is the very soul of our nation. And I move this motion.
Thanks, Emma. Is there a seconder to speak to motion 31? Someone to formally second motion 31? Councillor Declan Mina. Thanks, Declan. So moving on to motion 32 in the name of the Uachtarard Moycullen branch, Galway West. A mover for motion 32.
John McDonagh, Galway City Central candidate in the upcoming local elections. While communities have a right to seek information on accommodation or things that's going on in their area, it is now becoming far too copycat, so it is the burning of buildings designated for asylum seekers. We've seen it in the Moycullen area of Galway. I think we should condemn this in all possible ways, because the people who come here, and I work with a lot of asylum seekers and the New Irish, both in my job as a bus driver, I see firsthand that without the New Irish, our transport system would not be able to function properly in this state. And the far right are at this stage now very much trying to manipulate people's thoughts, and the basic facts of the matter is housing is a human right, and everyone that comes here is seeking international protection and deserve to be protected by this state. So I commend this motion to conference. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Is there a seconder looking to speak to motion 32? Ian McGahan, to second the motion.
Conference, while I support the thrust of this motion, I feel it's too vague, and actually I ask you to vote it down because I feel it actually could potentially be saying, yes, we agree with you protesting outside the houses of people seeking safety. I'm sorry, but peaceful protest outside people seeking shelter or safety is not peaceful. I agree with a lot of what the previous speaker said, but I feel the wording of this motion is too vague, and actually it is leaving us potentially open to saying that we support protesting outside places that could be considered for people seeking safety and shelter, and ask you to vote it down.
Thanks, Ian. We've been left with a slightly complicated situation in that you've seconded the motion, but you've expressed your objection to the motion. So on that basis, I'll take your comments and facilitate it as part of the debate, but I'll look for a seconder because obviously you're not supporting the motion. So is there a formal seconder, Dermot Lacey, then for motion 32? So motion 33 in the name of the Parliamentary Labour Party, Deputy Aodhán Ó Ríordáin is going to move motion 33 and also speak to the wider debate on immigration and integration.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to formally recommend to conference this document that has been put together that is available outside. An Ireland for All policy proposals on immigration and integration. Thanks very much to Robert Dowds and Councillor Emma Cutlip who put it together. It's a substantial document. I urge everybody to read it, and we would really want it to be adopted by conference. Just to speak to the other motions, all of which I support, notwithstanding the misgivings given to the last motion, motion 32. This, I feel, is probably the most important section of our conference this weekend. And when you see what's happening across the country, it's absolutely important that the strong message comes out of this conference of where we stand as a party, what we believe in. It's remarkable to me, and maybe not remarkable to everybody, to see those supposed bastions of the left, Sinn Féin, run to the right on immigration over the past period of time. And it was absolutely shameful when they marched in behind government to vote for the cutting of social welfare rates to Ukrainian refugees in this country. They were the only opposition party to back that. So we see you, Sinn Féin. We know what you're like. We know what you're about. When it comes to this issue, people say that Ireland is full. Well, Ireland is full of people who know their history. Ireland is full of people who are compassionate. Ireland is full of people who care. The very first time I actually ran for a local election 20 years ago was in the teeth of a referendum that was given to us by the Ranelagh reactionary Michael McDowell, and he decided that it was very important to strip the citizenship rights of Irish-born children. Well, one of the last things that Cormac O'Brien wanted to achieve before his sad passing a number of years ago was that the Labour Party would stand for a strong statement that if you're born here, you belong here, and we must do that in government. We must overturn what was done that shameful day. It is a stain on this country what's happening in Mount Street. It is a stain on this country that we're only offering people who come here legally to seek asylum. You're not illegal when you seek asylum. It is completely legitimately legal to seek asylum in this country, and we only offer them a tent. The very same week we're over in America pleading for the undocumented Irish in America to be given a better deal. It's absolutely shameful and hypocritical. And it is absolutely wrong that the road blockers, the people who will board on buses and inspect passports, the people who will protest, the people who will stand outside accommodation centres and abuse women and children, the people who know who the arsonists are, that they're setting the agenda. Well, they're not. We're going to set the agenda. This is an Ireland for all, and we absolutely believe that Ireland is full of people who are caring, compassionate, and believe absolutely fundamentally in equality. We always have. We were on the right side of that referendum 20 years ago. We're on the right side of this debate today. Thank you, conference.
Thanks to Aodhán for responding to the wider debate on immigration and integration. If there are any speakers looking to speak to any of the motions relating to motions 27 up to 33, you can't. They can't hear. If there are any speakers looking to speak to motions 27 to motions 33, I'll take any speakers now looking to speak to any of the motions.
Conference, my name is Drew Cadham. I'm the National Secretary of Labour Youth. I'd like to speak about motion 28. I'm proud to say that I moved to Ireland last year to study in what is a beautiful country. The welcome I've received in this party and broadly within the city has been nothing short of heartwarming. But it'd be remiss for me to say that's not been fully welcome. I'd be lying to your faces if I said I wasn't scared to some extent at the terrifying rise of the far right here. The events of last November, the arson attacks across the country, the reactionary marches outside centres, the far right are trying to drive immigrants out of this country and usher in the form of liberal government that indiscriminately attacks minorities. This country is better than being reduced to the actions of the far right, and they don't represent the majority of the country, and let them never say they do. I know Ireland's better than this. The Labour Party is better than this. We have to continue to support marginalised individuals in our communities and recognise that while Roderick O'Gorman and his department have utterly failed in their integration policy, immigrants shouldn't have to tread in fear on a daily basis, wary of any potential attacks or harassment you might get. I agree that the concerns of local communities, which have been fuelled by the shambolic integration policy and the lack of consultation, should be addressed. But it's not a binary. We can serve both. If we don't act as a bulwark against the creeping far right now, then conference, when will we? When it's too late? It's now or never. The Labour Party must continue to stand up and proudly support our values of equality, justice and inclusivity, and protect the social contract of this country, which in my view is deteriorating at an alarming rate. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Great, thank you. Any other speakers looking to speak to any motion? Robert Dowd. I'll take Kathleen as well. And Robert, you might just indicate the motion you're speaking to as well.
Right. I just want to speak briefly to motion 33. Robert Dowd's Clondalkin Rathcoole branch. I speak as somebody who works with people in the international protection system every week in terms of both teaching and in terms of involvement in the tidy towns of Clondalkin, where a lot of international protection applicants volunteer. I'm glad that the Labour Party took up our request that we write an immigration policy arising from our motion in last year's conference. And the document produced has many, many fine proposals in it. For example, in relation to the teaching of English, which is very inadequate for people who come to this country and don't have good English to start with. Another thing that it absolutely stresses the value that so many immigrants bring to this country in terms of their work and so on. And it's good that it does that, and there are many other positive things which you can read for yourselves within the document. However, I am concerned that it doesn't adequately address the situation regarding the international protection system. The international protection system is there for people who come from unsafe countries or from unsafe situations, and it should be for them. But, and I say this from my own experience, there are quite a lot of people in the system who are essentially economic migrants. And I strongly am of the view that if they wish to come to Ireland, they should come to Ireland in a different way via a visa system, as, for example, many Brazilian meat workers have done. And if that arose, it would lead to a better situation for genuine international protection applicants. They could have better accommodation and conditions. Because at the moment, and I say this in relation to a building just around the corner from where I live, many of them are living, apart from the tents, which is absolutely appalling, many of them are living in overcrowded dormitory situations, which are very difficult because often there are people from very different cultural backgrounds sharing the one space. So it is very important that we free up space for them. And that would be a win for those international protection applicants, and if we had better services for them, it would be a win for them as well. It would also be a win for the country as a whole, because while people are generally well disposed to immigrants, They are concerned that we are not on top of the situation, and they need to be reassured in that. And I think that is a job that the Labour Party can do with its humane approach to things. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Any other speakers looking to speak on motions 27 up to motion 33? Councillor Brian McDonagh.
Hi, Brian McDonagh, Labour councillor in Fingal County Council. I'm incredibly proud to stand and to see the representation that our party is striving to make of everybody who lives in this country. I'm here to speak on motion 32, and the second half of that motion I really want to commend as being absolutely 100% exactly what we believe in, which is we vehemently condemn those who would block, burn or boycott accommodation set aside for people seeking safety and shelter, regardless of age, sex, religion or nationality. It's a no-brainer. The conference respects the rights of communities to seek official information or peacefully protest against initiatives in their areas. I respect the right of anybody to protest on planning issues, on housing issues, or in favour of housing issues. But I don't think we'd ever pass a motion saying that we would respect the right for people to protest against social housing because it's social housing. And I think unintentionally this motion respects the right of people to protest against initiatives set aside for people seeking safety and shelter, and the implication is because it's seeking safety and shelter. So I respect people's right to protest. I respect the right to protest for proper planning, for services and for inappropriate things. But I don't think that we should pass this motion because I understand the second half of it is amazing. It's got brilliant intentions. But if we pass it, it could be misinterpreted as being something that it's not meant to be. So I'd like to oppose motion 32. And again, thanks for all the amazing contributions from everybody else. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Councillor Emma Cutlip.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take the opportunity to speak to motion 33. I had the distinct pleasure of sitting on the working group that devised this policy. As someone who's married to a migrant, I thought I understood the immigration system. I didn't. Those we spoke to who know aspects of the immigration system didn't know the immigration system. The truth is we have a very dysfunctional and complex immigration system. We need immigration in this country. We need clear, concise and robust policies that if someone does want to find a better life for themselves and come here to find work, that they can do so, not at the behest of an employer who wants to exploit them in fruit picking or deboning meat or whatever it might be. We want to have a work permit system that works for workers. We also want to have a fast, efficient and functional IPAS system, because it doesn't matter why the individual reasons that you come from whatever country you come from to seek refuge here. You are entitled to do so. A person living across the Irish Sea in the United Kingdom is entitled, if they need to, thankfully they don't, to come here and seek international protection if their life is in danger. That is a safe country, but they are still entitled to subsidiary protection. And we have to stop this business of safe countries, because it is not whether your country is safe, it is whether you, a human being, is safe. And we open our doors and welcome you. And that is our message. And I am proud to be a part of this policy and one of the first parties to have a robust immigration policy addressing this complex and broken system that has caused so much heartache in this country. And I commend the motion.
Last speaker. So I'll take a last speaker on this debate. It's just around the side, Lorraine. Just for conference, the access point up onto the stage is just the door to the left, apologies. And there'll be someone just standing at the door just to bring comrades around. I'll take a last speaker then to this debate, and then we'll move it into a vote on the section around immigration and integration. So the last speaker then to speak to this motion will be Lorraine Power. Now, apologies, Lorraine, I know she'll be out of breath by the time she gets to the stand, but last speaker is Lorraine. Thanks, Lorraine.
Sorry, apologies for that. I should have known that. Lorraine Mulligan from the Dublin Bay South constituency. I just want to speak to motion 33. I was part of the working group, and I want to thank the other members, particularly Barbara Kennedy, who's here as well, and Robert Dowds and Catherine Clancy. It was a very difficult discussion at times. It's a very complex area. I'm looking at people here who I know are asked difficult questions on the doorsteps about this topic and will continue to be. I think it's fair to say that we had arguments and counter-arguments and back and forth, and we tried to get a balance that was progressive and welcoming, in particular to our new Irish, and for the need to integrate and have positive and welcoming communities. But I do think it's important to say that there are concerns in Irish society, and I think as a party we have to address them. And our concern was not to play into the far right, not to use the language of the far right, but to really acknowledge that people do have concerns. And that the system has to be robust and people have to have confidence in the system that is there. So I think this is a good basis for our policy, for developing our policy for the manifesto, for our manifestos. I don't think it's the end of the conversation, and I think people here will have their own views on this topic, but I think it's a very good basis, and it's one that emphasises inclusion. I think that's what our party is about. So I commend the motion. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll come back then to a vote on each of the motions under immigration and integration. I suppose one thing that is extremely clear in dealing with each of the motions is we've hit to the heart of Labour values, and as a party we're not afraid to say what's not popular. We're standing over what's the right thing to say, and I think that stands to us as a political party being a voice who consistently stands with all workers and all members of our communities. So moving to motion 27, which was the motion from the composite motion from the Fitzgerald Kearney branch, Portobello, and Dublin Bay South and New Ross branch. So those in favour by show of delegate cards, those in favour of motion 27? Those against? Abstentions? Motion 27 is carried. Motion 28 then in the name of Labour Intercultural, those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Motion 28 is carried. Motion 29 then in the name of Galway City West Branch, Galway West. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Motion 29 is carried. Motion 30 then in the name of Leitrim Gralton Branch. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Motion 30 is carried. Motion 31 then in the name of the Louth constituency. Those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Motion 31 is carried. Motion 32 then from the Uachtarard Moycullen branch, Galway West. Those in favour of motion 32? Those against? Any abstentions? Okay, so motion 32 has fallen. That motion has been rejected. Motion 33 then in the name of the Parliamentary Labour Party. Those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? So motion 33 has been carried. So thanks everyone for your contribution under the Immigration and Integration section of conference. And then we're moving just directly onto the Justice section. So again, our party spokesperson has joined us, Deputy Aodhán Ó Ríordáin, to contribute on the debate in relation to justice. So we're dealing with motions 34, 35, 36, 37 and 38 under this section. So motion 38 in the name of the Dublin Central, 34, what did I say? Apologies, motion 34, I was getting ahead of myself there. So motion 34 in the name of Dublin Central Constituency Council. So just give the delegate from Dublin Central the opportunity to come up on the stage. I'll just move then to motion 35 in the meantime, but I'll come back to 34. So motion 35 is in the name of the Dublin Northwest constituency. So we've Linda O'Sullivan to move it.
Hello comrades, it's an honour to attend my first Labour conference. First of all, I just want to commend the bravery of, many of you would have seen the late last night, Mel B speaking about her harrowing experience of domestic violence. So I want to commend Mel B and the lady on Claire Byrne who spoke about her experience. And I want to say that's what brave is. The media this week have portrayed Brave and members of Fianna Gael saying that it's brave that Leo has resigned. These women are what brave is, not what he did. Domestic violence is a societal issue. If I was to ask everyone in this room, if you or someone you know has experienced domestic violence, I guarantee I'd see a room full of hands. 1 in 3 have experienced domestic violence. Women's Aid have had an increase of over 16% to phone lines. The cost of living crisis and housing crisis exacerbated the toll on victims and families. Post-separation abuse is a significant issue played out in our family courts. Financial abuse is the most common abuse in Ireland. Currently under the legislation for domestic violence leave, it currently sits at 5 days over 12 months. This is not enough. Submissions from both Women's Aid and working groups stated 10 days as a minimum, just like the Philippines and New Zealand. The current circular for domestic violence leave given to public service workers is problematic for many reasons. Supporting documentation is what we are asking victims to give. We slammed IBEC for asking for proof of what women have experienced, men and children. This circular in its very self acts as a barrier for those women wanting to apply for this leave. As a survivor of domestic violence, I've availed of this leave. I had a manager who didn't ask any questions, but I was lucky. Many are not. We need to change this to ensure no such barrier exists so that to allow anyone who needs it to avail of it. We must ensure automatic access to legal aid for those seeking domestic violence orders, separations and divorces through DV in our family courts. I was recently granted my divorce but was denied legal aid. As an SNA, I can assure you our education spokesperson will confirm SNAs are not earning too much, and we certainly aren't millionaires. Someone's maybe say that to Norma. Someone's financial situation should not act as a barrier to those seeking orders for separation and divorce. Why further punish victims? This government continues to fail victims of domestic violence. In the constituency you're sitting in now of Dublin North West, we have had 2 women died violently, Jennifer Poole and Fabiola Compredo Salas Silvia. The promised reforms in our government strategy cannot come quick enough. We still haven't a refuge place in every county. We must get this right to honour the many lives that have been lost in such circumstances, and I commend this motion to conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda, and well done. Is there a seconder to speak to motion 35 or to formally second? Senator Annie Hoey. Thanks, Annie. And then motion 36 in the name of Mayfield Dillon's Cross branch. We've Kathleen Lynch.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to start by picking up the delegate card. But could I just congratulate everyone on the organisation of the conference. Well done. I know it's not easy, and very well done. Could I just comment very briefly on the last motion in relation to domestic violence? I still don't understand why we continue to take the victim out of the situation rather than the perpetrator. And I think the Labour Party should take a serious look at our attitude towards it. 1 or 2 nights in a safe setting, I understand. But why on earth would you take, whether it's men or women, and their children out of their homes and leave the perpetrator in it? I think we should take a serious look at why we do this. Motion number 36 is conference calls on the government to review the Family Law Divorce Act 1996 as soon as possible, with particular emphasis on the overall costs for the divorcing couple, in order to ensure that it will not be prohibitive for those who wish to end their marriage. A couple in an irreparable relationship should not have to remain together because of financial burden. I'm looking down, and there's a few of us in the hall that still remember the first divorce campaign. It was neither pleasant nor profitable. We lost, and lost by an overwhelming margin. And not alone did we lose by an overwhelming margin, some of us lost our dignity, other of us lost bits of flesh, and it wasn't pleasant, as those of you who were there will recognise. Second time round, it was a bit easier. Society had changed. People recognised that people wished to remarry. It wasn't so much about divorcing, but it was about remarrying. I did not go out and campaign, and I'm sure those of you nodding at me today did not go out and campaign for divorce, which was unaffordable. They now tell me that the average cost is between 10 and 20,000. And I know it's far more than that in some cases. Surely we can do better for people who wish to end their marriages and to move on with their lives, because this is not affordable. It's okay if you have loads of money, it can be done. But when you haven't, not alone are you breaking up your marriage, and they say that getting married is expensive. Well, I have news for you. Getting divorced is even more expensive. So people should think about it very carefully. And getting divorced should not be prohibitive because you can't afford it. Should not be prohibitive because you can't afford it. Surely we can put better in place. And I'm not calling on the government to review this legislation. I'm calling on the Labour Party to redraft that piece of legislation and ensure that people who no longer wish to be married can actually walk out with some degree of dignity. And if you're outside of Dublin, because there are fewer judges, it will cost you more. Because you'll go to court, the judge can't hear it, because there are more pressing cases, and I believe there are more pressing cases. Don't get me wrong, I think TUSLA cases are more pressing cases. I think that we should have separated out long ago, and 25 years to 30 years ago, I campaigned with others, for a separation of family courts, for specific family courts, that you wouldn't have judges who are very overworked, and I've seen this up close, who are very overworked, dealing with drunk driving in the morning and family issues in the afternoon. That is not right, and it shouldn't still be happening. I hope that there is no opposition to this motion, and I hope that the Parliamentary Party will take it on board. Getting a divorce should not be beyond your wit. We do not in Ireland just separate for the sake of separation. People in Ireland separate because they can't afford to get divorced. It's as simple as that. And if you take a look at the mixture of judicial separation and the divorce rate, we're not the abusers of the system, because people simply can't afford it. And we should be able to put a system in place that people can, 1, access, and 2, can afford. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Is there a seconder for motion 36? Robert Dowds. Thanks, formally seconding motion 36. So moving then to motion 37 in the name of the Ballymun Meekstown branch, Daniel Waugh.
Daniel Waugh, Ballymun Meekstown. This motion has 2 facets, and I'm going to talk about the what, the who, the why, and the action that's involved in this motion. The first facet is very clear. It's talking about community and the investment we need from local and the government in prevention and exiting from extremism. However, the last line is a bit more heavy hitting and has more teeth to it. It's calling for the banning of far-right terrorist organisations that operate globally and within Ireland. And I'm going to focus my time a bit more on that to make that kind of more clear for those who might be nervous with that idea. It talks more about that kind of judicial approach to banning terrorist organisations. What that means is we make their material, their content, recruitment and activity of those groups or organisations illegal in Ireland. Who am I actually talking about? I'm not talking about the hooligans from last year in the riots. I'm not talking about the agitators that infiltrate our communities and protest. I'm talking about the people who are much darker than that, and they want basically to commit violence in the name of terrorism and in the name of fear. I'm talking about this idea of white supremacy or accelerationism. This is a radical ideology which wants to accelerate social collapse, choose violence to intensify instability, dominate their ideas around the world and achieve their goals of a white supremacist world. Sounds very academic, but it's actually quite real. And even in the last section we spoke about far right, these people, it's slightly a matter of time before they go further down the rabbit hole and actually commit kind of acts of terrorism or violence where people are hurt or worse, killed. It's important here because boundaries, geography no longer matters. People don't need to go in the cover of darkness to meet people in secret of fear of being exposed for being in these groups. They can do it 24/7 online behind their screens, and it can be radicalized in sometimes just a week. The evidence shows there's an increase in far-right terrorism all across Europe. Countries and nations like the UK, France, Canada, Germany, New Zealand, Australia have already banned a significant amount of these groups, organisations that operate online and radicalise people as young as 13 years of age to go out and commit acts of terrorism. Canada, for example, has banned one organisation which has a branch right here on the island of Ireland in Ulster. Members from these groups have tried to enter this country, and recently a number of people have been deported or sent back because they've been affiliated with some of these groups instead of arrested and trialed, for example. We've seen an increase in arson attacks, which in my opinion is acts of terrorism. The goal is to spread fear and instability and cause the government to change their opinion. And it's a matter of time before those arson attacks expand and actually someone is hurt in one of those attacks. The motion's quite clear. It's calling for the Labour Party to basically bring forward legislation to make suppression orders to ban these terrorist organisations. And I'm very explicit on the word terrorism here, not just far right, very kind of on that spectrum. I'm talking right to the extremity of terrorism here. So I ask you to support this motion, and I'm happy to move this forward. If you want to learn more about any of these topics, feel free to find me later on. But thank you very much for your time, and it's been great talking to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. Is there a seconder for motion 37? Councillor Declan Mina. Thanks, Declan. So then moving on to motion 38 in the name of Labour LGBTQ+. Ian McGahan.
Conference, it's 20 years since I joined the Labour Party and 20 years since a couple of us got together to establish Labour LGBTQ+. And as a Labour Party, we have proudly put forward many policies that have changed the lives of LGBTQ+ people in this country. But Conference, things could easily be going backwards. In the last 6 or 7 years, I've lost count of the times I've been called a paedophile or a groomer on social media. I'm looking at my colleague, Senator Annie Hoey, who has been the same. Councillor Alison Gilliland was targeted also. Recently, Councillor Declan Mina was targeted on the street because of his disability. My colleague over here, Linda O'Sullivan, was targeted because she just said that she voted yes in the referendum, and she was abused, and she was targeted, and she was harassed, and people got her phone number. We need to tackle hate meaningfully in this country. Legislation such as the Hate Crime and Hate Speech Bill, yes, it's welcome, but legislation doesn't tackle the issues in totality. We need to look more broadly at education. We need to look at how people can learn critical thinking skills in schools, at how people can challenge what they read and see on the internet every day. Conference hate is a threat to our democracy. Pat Rabbitte spoke the other day about how 100 British MPs are actually not running in the next election because they've been targeted so much. I was at a conference in Brussels last week where many MEPs said they're not running because of this issue. Conference, I ask you to vote for this motion. We need a broad national plan that tackles hate in this country. Yes, we need legislation, but we need education, we need information, and we need to strongly resist it.
Thanks, Ian, and solidarity to yourself and to other comrades experiencing hateful action by the far right and others. So I'll take common debate now. Anyone who's looking to speak to motion, apologies, sorry, I should look for a seconder for motion 38. Is there a seconder for motion 38, Conall O'Boyle? Thanks. So I'll move to common debate now in relation to motions 34, 35, 36, no, apologies. I'll take common debate on motions 35, 36, 37 and 38. We haven't gotten a mover for motion 34 in the name of Dublin Central yet. So if there's somebody in a position to move motion 34, I'll take it within common debate. So if anyone would like to speak to any of the motions, I'll take them now. So Linda O'Sullivan. And then I'll invite the party spokesperson to respond.
I'm just going to speak to motion 38. We know our government have managed with kid gloves the rise of the far right in Ireland. There's no other way to say it. They claim they didn't see it coming, but unions, groups and our party warned them of this and reminded them of this when our city was under attack during the Dublin riots. The far right attacked me recently due to a contribution I made on Katie Hannon as part of a lone parent, single parent group, Spark. The threats were sinister, sexual and otherwise, and resulted in RT having to remove footage of my piece and contribution on Katie Hannon for my own safety and protection. These people claim to care about women and children, yet they tend to target us relentlessly. Victims have included women that have spoken on Claire Byrne, Katie Hannon, and as we all know, many of our party spokespersons. I'm thinking most recently of Eilish Bell from the National Women's Council and the abuse they've been subjected to since the referendum. The far right doesn't scare me or us. The far right won't intimidate me or us, and the far right are a minority and not a majority. This party strongly rejects the hatred being spewed by the far right. This party in Ireland has no place for racist fascists. We need action, we need a plan, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Councillor Emma Cutlip.
I just want to speak to motion 35. As a member of Labour Women a number of years ago, we took to writing a policy that we termed beyond zero tolerance, because we recognised that while the policy zero tolerance that the government had come out with was certainly a step change in the protection of women in domestic violence situations, it doesn't go far enough, and we need to dismantle the barriers that impede women from exiting domestic violence. And this motion speaks to one of those. To think that a woman who might be coercively controlled and dependent on the income of her spouse will then be subjected to a means test based on his income in order to access legal aid to escape that domestic violence situation. That is not on. That is not the way forward for protecting women. And it is only through the fearless dedication of activists like my comrade, and I like to call her a dear friend, Linda, who have fought for these issues. Because as difficult as it is to exit domestic violence, it is even more difficult with that burden on your shoulder to stand up and fight for everybody else in domestic violence. So I commend my comrade for her work on this. And I commend the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma. Owen Barry to speak to the common debate.
I'd like to speak in support of motion 35. As a social worker and as a family therapist, I've often seen the devastating impact of domestic violence on people and families. I think that the pathway for people to get their lives back is far too difficult and far too dependent on how much money they have, and it's far too challenging for people to get out of it. But one part of the motion that I would speak in support of is that often domestic violence doesn't start when people are in their mid-20s or their late 20s. It can often start when people are in their adolescent, when they're teenagers or when they're in college. Domestic violence would often start when people are in their first relationships. And the impact of that can have a very devastating effect on their profession. One, just the effect of trying to go to college. But often some professions, such as social work, have mandatory attendance records. And it's important that those attendance records aren't affected if people have to take leave because they're dealing with domestic violence. So I support Linda's motion and ask the conference to support it.
Joe Costello then to move motion 34 in the name of Dublin Central. Thanks, Joe.
Joe Costello, Dublin Central. Well, I wasn't supposed to speak on this motion, but I couldn't let a Dublin Central motion go by without proposing it. Of course, we condemn the riots that took place in Dublin Central, and were in Dublin Central around Parnell Square, in my own constituency, in November 2023. And really, it was very interesting to find out that anybody who has been arrested in relation to that has not been from Dublin Central, have not been from the actual area where the riots took place. So the area can get a bad name and has got a bad name for reasons not necessarily associated with itself. It is a very vibrant area, and of all the areas in the city, there's probably a stronger community engagement in that area than anywhere else. And that's why we'd like to see a stronger community Garda in that area as well, because eventually that is the best way to affect policing. Community Garda initially, and I remember I wasn't engaged in politics at the time, but the very first booklet that was published on Community Garda was published by the AGSI, the Association of Garda Sergeants and Inspectors, in 1972. And since that, I don't really believe that the concept has been developed in any progressive fashion. There is no way really, there's no pathway for Community Gardaí to progress as an effective section of the Gardaí. And we were looking at the whole area in the North Inner City in the past under Superintendent Leahy, who did a PhD on community policing and on small area community policing, so that it would be reduced from the broad concept to which a lot of lip service is paid to the actual identification of responsibility for local area and local knowledge and community policing around the city. That hasn't taken place. And the other side of the concept is to provide a degree of training for Gardaí in an urban context. In the past, the Phoenix Park was in fact where the Gardaí were trained. But it would be useful in the context of community development, and particularly community policing, that there would be an element of urban training for Gardaí, and that it would be appropriate that a faculty of a college in the city perhaps would be dedicated towards that. And that's a direction I'd like to see. But what's missing is any effective policy to promote and to progress community policing. And that's what this particular motion calls for. So I commend the motion to you.
Is there someone to second motion 34? I just want to deal with motion 34 just first, and I'll come back to you, James. So is there a seconder for motion 34? Councillor Declan Mina. Thanks, Declan. And then I'll take the final bodies on stage to speak to the rest of common debate. So I see James Kearney, Dave Kitching, and Liam van der Speck, and then I'm going to go over to the party spokesperson. So James.
Just as the co-chairperson for Labour LGBTQ+, I want to speak to motion 38 just very, very briefly, and also in relation to what our comrade Linda O'Sullivan said in terms of the far right not scaring us or this party. And I want to commend that because, as we say here, marginalised groups including women, LGBTQ+I community, national, ethnic and religious minorities. If we look around this room and we see the candidates that are standing for us in this set of local elections and further beyond, I have not seen a more diverse room of candidates in terms of ability, age, gender, sexuality and all other backgrounds that they come from. And I just think that's a true testament to the strength of this party going forward in the face of this hatred and onslaught that we're seeing either online and offline. Just want to commend that conference. Support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, James. So Liam and then Dave.
Liam van der Speck, Cavan Monaghan. I just want to commend motion 34 because I think something that's often doesn't get enough discussion, something that's very unique and good about Ireland is I think that our police force is unarmed overwhelmingly, and I think you don't get that in most countries, and that's an important thing. And I think it was very important to highlight the need for more Gardaí and community Gardaí, and that's exactly what we need. The easy solution, which I think would be a terrible way to go down, is to have more armed Gardaí with non-lethal weapons, lethal weapons, more giving them almost military-grade vehicles. That's not the path to go down. I think we need more Gardaí in the street, but I would hate to see us lose the value of having an unarmed Gardaí. So thanks to motion 34.
David Kitching, Shelburne Branch. I'd like to speak in support of motion 37. So as a party and as a group of people, we've come here because of our values. We care about communities, but we care about solidarity, whether that's down our own road or the other side of the world. But our opponents are trying to take control of the narrative. Some are motivated by hatred, but more still are motivated by cowardice. They will appease because it suits their own career advancement, their own expediency. And the problem is that this is the thin end of the wedge. So while the motion from Ballymun Meekstown spoke about the opportunity structures created in an online environment, the hate crimes that we've been describing were fostered by an atmosphere of appeasement. So whether you're talking about the attacks in Utoya or in Christchurch or the many others, there were mainstream politicians who were giving more and more space to hateful speech, to hateful politics. And I suppose what I'm asking for our party, because I know it adheres to our values, is to stand by that narrative that we want to put forward, and also to put pressure on other parties. Because we've been very clear that we will not collaborate with the far right. We've been very clear that we will not indulge in their stupid, base, racist narratives. And we need to put pressure on other parties, on our counterparts in councils, in the Oireachtas, in the European Parliament, that they will adhere to the same standards, so that we don't get to the position where we're combating hate crimes through legislation on IT companies or whatever the case may be. So I'd like to congratulate Ballymun Meekstown on the motion and commend it to conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. So I'd like to invite the party spokesperson on Justice, Deputy Eoin Reardon, to respond to the debate.
Thanks so much, Chair, and these have been an excellent debate. I just turn to motion 34 first from Dublin Central. I think the abiding image of this government over the last number of years for me is a burning bus on O'Connell Street. I think what Joe has set out here is absolutely crucial to how we're going to work beyond what has happened. We have to, empower communities by building on these relationships between An Garda Síochána and local people. We can't pretend that there hasn't been an intergenerational issue over many years, a kind of a chasm between the Guards and some local communities. So we can't pretend that isn't an issue. So we have to absolutely work in order to improve that relationship. And certainly the Minister for Justice calling people scumbags isn't part of that process, and she should apologise for that. What as Owen has said here in terms of Linda's motion is extremely important. I want to again join with others for congratulating and standing with Linda and all victims of gender and gender-based violence. It's amazing these protesters outside accommodation centres seem to think that they are the ones who are going to protect women and children from the outsiders. Let's be clear, Irish women are assaulted and murdered by people they know in their own homes all the time. And this starts early, and I think we have to be serious about gender equality in this country, and we have to stop separating boys and girls in our schools. I think we have to be serious about that. I think Kathleen's motion is absolutely crucial as well in terms of divorce. Not only is it cruel on couples, but it's particularly cruel on children to have to live in a situation where a relationship has broken down. And I think we'd have to listen to her wise words on that one. 37 and 38 are very similar. We don't have to wait until somebody is killed until we take this seriously, because somebody is going to be killed. And this, you know, as Willie O'Dea says, this is the woke gallery. Well, I wish Willie O'Dea was awake the night of the bank guarantee. We might have a better country than the one that he oversaw. So let's be serious about these social media companies, and indeed other people who have platformed this hate. We should stop having these secret, soft-worded deals on corporation tax when it comes to social media companies and start talking seriously about the hate that they promote in order to make a profit. So, on that basis, I would commend all of the motions, but also to say the Guards, they need our support. They are resigning in unprecedented numbers. And as a Dublin-based representative, they can't afford to live in Dublin. We need to listen to the Guards and what they're saying. They can't do their work. They can't engage with young people unless they're paid properly and are treated with the respect that they deserve by the Minister. Thank you.
Thanks, Aon, for responding to the debate on justice. So we're just going to move to a vote now on motions 34, 35, 36, 37 and 38 before we move on to the final session under the plenary session 3, which is to deal with agriculture and rural affairs. So to move to the first vote then on motion 34 from the Dublin Central constituency. All those in favour of motion 34 by show of delegate cards? All those against? Abstentions? Motion 34 is carried. Motion 35 in the name of the Dublin North West constituency. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Motion 35 is carried. Then motion 36 in the name of Mayfield Dillon's Cross branch. All those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Motion 36 is carried, and then our second last motion, motion 37 in the name of Ballymun Meekstown. Those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? Motion 37 is carried, and then motion 38 in the name of Labour LGBTQ+. All those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Motion 38 is carried. So that concludes our section on justice. So thanks again to party spokesperson Deputy Aon O'Riordan for responding, and to comrades for the debate on that section. So now we're just moving to the final part of session 3, which is dealing with agriculture and rural affairs. So we've motions 60, 61 and 62 to deal with. So just moving then to that section, the first motion that we're going to be dealing with is motion 60 in the name of Dublin South Central, and if movers for motions 61 and 62 could move to the top of the stage by using the door on the left hand side where Aaron Burke is standing there to access the stage. I'll just give it a second, Alison, if that's okay, just to allow time to get the debate. So motion 60 then in the name of Dublin South Central, Alison O'Donoghue to move.
Hello delegates, my name is Alison O'Donoghue, Dublin South Central, Crumlin Kimmage, Frank Clusky branch. Ireland is rated #1 in the world for food security. We produce high quality food for a population many times bigger than actually live here. But our food security is also because of our ability to trade, and therein lies a significant problem. We import animal feed from 65 countries around the world. We export meat and dairy products to the EU, UK, US, and are expanding into Asia. We import fruit and vegetables from climate-vulnerable countries such as China and South Africa. And within the EU, Spain is already in drought this year. France, Spain, Greece have already faced drought, fires. Devastating floods in Greece last year resulted in a loss of 20% of their agricultural land. Our ability to import fruit and vegetables is at risk. In 2023, it was the hottest year on record. We had an agricultural drought in this country, which led to empty vegetable shelves. We have only 100 field vegetable growers left in this country. The rains later in the summer affected cereal and crop and potato harvest. But what do we actually eat? We eat 50% ultra-processed food. Each 10% increase in ultra-processed food correlates directly to a 12% increase in cancer, a 21% increase in depressive symptoms, and a 21% increase in cardiovascular disease. Along with the misery of ill health for individuals, it adds to the pressure of an already strained health system. The purpose of this motion is to ensure that our state food research agency, Teagasc, put food security and sustainability to the fore, that it includes the voice of the consumer, the voice of health. We need to support growers' incomes and in research so that our food system is resilient in the face of climate change, that our population has the food and food knowledge and skills it needs for human health and human sustainability. We need to build the skills and resilience into the food system so that we can withstand the already evident impact of climate change and the shocks in the food system to come. I commend this motion to conference.
Thanks, Alison. Is there a seconder for motion 60? Formal seconder from Sean O'Horgan. Thanks, Sean. Motion 61 then in the name of Clondalkin Rathcoole branch. Robert Dowds.
Robert Dowds, Clondalkin Rathcoole branch. I apologise for speaking again, but this is the last time I'll speak at conference. This motion calls for, in relation to access to the countryside for walkers and other recreational users, that it should be enshrined in law, this access. And if this seems a strange idea, it's what happens in other countries. For example, our nearest neighbour, England and Wales, they have the Countryside and Rights of Way Act 2000, which guarantees and protects access for walkers and other recreational users around the country over there. And the same is true in many, many continental countries, Sweden, France, you name it. Access is so much easier than Ireland. And access is important for a number of reasons. It's important for our own mental well-being. It's important that we can get out into the countryside and enjoy the countryside. It's important in terms of rural economies because in places where access for walkers is easy, there is a definite spin-off in the local economy. And so it is good for tourism, it is good for us. And I mean, where good access is available, such as, for example, the Waterford Greenway, that brought a 250,000 visitors to that area in 2017 after it was set up, and similarly with the Westport Greenway. So it is both good for us personally, physically, and for our economy. But there are many problems because it's permissive. Those who give permission to give access can withdraw it, and that has happened in many occasions. I mean, at the moment, as chairperson of Keep Ireland Open, which advocates for this, I'm aware of many, many cases. For example, access has been blocked to Wicklow Head for walkers, Castlegold on Beach near Glenties in County Donegal. There's been a court case to do with that, and Donegal County Council have had to fight unacceptable blockage of access there. The North Beach in Arklow has been blocked by a caravan park owner. And most scandalously of all, there are 2 members of the Enniskerry Walking Club who are saddled with a £38,500 legal bill because they fought for the right to walk in a place which has been marked as a road back as far as 1760. How unreasonable is that? So we do need a legislation. Now, in my capacity as chair of Keep Ireland Open, we lobbied all the political parties, and we got strong support from Labour, from the Greens, and to some degree from the Social Democrats. The 3 bigger parties, Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, will not commit on this issue at all. And I just want to thank the Parliamentary Party for filleting a bill I had before the Dáil in 2013, where they have put it in as an amendment to the current planning bill. So I appreciate them doing that. And I also want to thank Rory Quinn, who initiated this, because the bill I had was a copy of something that he initiated. I also want to thank Labour councillor in Kilmacthomas, Ger Barron, who fought for the Waterford Greenway, and as thanks he lost his seat. Unfortunately, when people actually saw what great thing he had done for his community, he regained his seat. So, but in conclusion, I would ask you to support this for all our benefits and for the benefit of tourists who come to visit this country. Thank you.
Is there a seconder to motion 61? Sean O'Horgan again. Thanks, Sean. You're doing a lot of heavy lifting this afternoon. So, motion 62 in the name of Central Council, Conall O'Boyle.
Thanks again, Chair. Conall O'Boyle, Carroll Kilkenny, Central Council. I'm happy to bring forward this motion today on behalf of the Central Council. It is very simple. Labour is committed to the speedy rollout of broadband to rural Ireland. Look, I mean, during COVID, you know, it was something that really a lot of people, like my grandmother, went for 80 years without never having Wi-Fi in her house. But when she had to watch Mass, it was the first thing that was brought in, you know. So these are the benefits of this in ways that you mightn't think, you know. But no, I'm happy to move this motion. It is very simple. There isn't an awful lot to say about it. I think the merits of it are written very clearly, you know, and it's very obvious, and anybody who's living in the countryside will be able to attest to that. So, thank you.
Is there a seconder to motion 62? Mike O'Connor. Thanks, Mike. So I'll take common debate now on motion 60, 61 and 62. So if there's anyone offering, Peter Horgan.
Thanks very much, Conference. Just on the last motion on rural broadband, and even though I am speaking as a city-based rep for the party, I have had dealings over the last 10 years in rural parts of primarily North County Cork. And it's important, Conference, that we remember that this broadband plan was railroaded through the Dáil by Fine Gael and the Fine Gael acolytes supporting them. And if you speak to anyone seeking broadband today, they're told, you got to wait. You got to wait till 2030, you got to wait till 2028. And we have people outside of Dublin looking to work from home, looking to set up families, looking to support their local areas where they grew up, where they were born and bred, and they cannot because of the lack of broadband. And the commercialisation of the broadband network by Fine Gael, by Dennis Naughton, and by others like them in that government and subsequent governments means that people are railroaded back into the city centres, and we're pinched as a country. And what we could be doing is supporting people in local towns and villages around Cork, North Cork, South Cork, and in other counties other than Cork. But we're not, because the government don't want to do that, because they're happy to hand it over to the broadband companies. And when you deal with the broadband companies, Conference, they'll come out and they'll dig up the footpath and they'll leave it in you know what, for a couple of months until someone else comes back out or else someone trips over. So it's not just a rural Ireland problem, it's an urban-based problem, and we need a new government because this coalition of chaos doesn't care about the people of Ireland and the needs that they have, and it's high time that we had an election. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. I think we'll just about take that Cork reference to conference. So the next speaker looking to speak is Michael Kennedy.
Hi folks, I'm Mike Kennedy. I just want to oppose motion 61 on the access to country lands. Coming from a rural community and a sheep farming background, farmers don't want to block people access onto the lands, but at numerous farming meetings I've attended over the last number of months, it has been highlighted numerous times. I'm a dog lover. All my family are dog lovers, but numerous occasions we are hearing stories of farmers being attacked and abused verbally when they approach people walking on the lands, that they're happy to let the people walk through their lands, and on commonage lands especially. And people are asked to keep their dogs on a leash as soon as they walk past the farmer, and a couple of 100 feet into the field, they're releasing the dog. And their Ollie or their Jessie won't do anything wrong. But if you're coming from a sheep farming background, which I do, a strange dog causes distress, and especially this time of the year when you have sheep, heavy in lamb, on our hills, in our fields. It is very distressing coming from a farming background to see ewes aborting their lambs as a result of a walker coming through your lands, not thinking about what the damage their little dog will do. Now again, as I say, I am totally, and most people in the countryside are totally up to the accessibility and happy to let people go through their lands and continue going through their lands. But the one part of this motion is I feel that there has to be full recognition for the landowner as well, and courtesy to the landowner, and thinking about your community that you're coming into. Like I can speak on a personal thing, my own sister-in-law and brother-in-law have a dog. They came into an area with their dog, and their dog's a lovely dog. Released him off the leash, and he caused distress to sheep in an area. These things people have to think about, and this is why I'm opposing this motion, as it's not thinking fully through the access to people's property. How would people in urban areas like if we were walking into their driveway with our sheep and our dogs? They wouldn't like it. Would we get access? I personally don't think we would, so this is why I'm opposing this motion.
I have two final speakers looking to. I'll take Breedine Ling Maloney first, and then I'll take Robert.
Myself and Vicky Clancy-Byrne from Wexford are also opposing parts of motion 61. Again, coming from a rural background, coming from farming backgrounds. The first two parts, we are fully agreeance with Greenways. We are fighting for the Greenway from Rosslare to New Ross to join up with the Greenway to New Ross to Waterford, which will hopefully then go down to Cork. To get from, I don't know, we'll actually go more from Cork to Wexford because our county is so beautiful. But the issues of the first part is just too serious. There's not enough information here. If we as the Labour Party decide on this motion, we are going against farmers' wishes. Farmers want to be part of this conversation. I don't believe this is allowing farmers to be part of this conversation. We have a real strong issue to be working with farmers. We are still a rural party. I would feel that going out on the doors with this in rural Wexford will be a real issue, and I would ask you to vote no, only on that part, and unfortunately it is full of it. Motion 62, I live in rural Wexford. It is a huge issue with the rural broadband. It is so slow. I live with fibre. It's great. My husband works from home. I can work from home, but I talk to constituents every week of the issue of the slow rollout of broadband, and then when it is being done, just the mess that is being created during it. We absolutely agree with motion 62. Thank you.
And then the final speaker, Robert Dowd.
Sorry, one sentence in relation to motion 61. The word responsible is there for a reason, because responsible access does not include bringing dogs in amongst ewes that are pregnant. I have enough close connection with farming to know that. And could I also thank Councillor Angela Feeney here, because she brought my attention to the problems they're having in terms of access at Castletown House in Selbridge, which is an absolute disgrace, and it's another reason why we need legislation. Thank you.
I'm now going to invite the party spokesperson on agriculture and rural affairs to respond to the debate. So, Deputy Alan Kelly.
Colleagues, great to be here. I don't know, did we do something earlier on when everyone just got up and walked out? But there's a few left, fair hardy souls. May I begin by just wishing all our candidates in the local and European election the best of luck, and in any way I can help each or any of you, please feel free to ask. Just want to run through the motions and then say a little bit about the topic area. First motion, completely, motion number 60, completely support. Just want to highlight the issue of below-cost selling, because the downward impact of below-cost selling on small producers is huge, and it's something we should totally oppose. So I want to thank in particular the Dublin Central constituency for that motion and all the consequential issues that they have brought out in a comprehensive motion. I 100% accept the spirit of the motion number 61, and I've debated this motion with my good friend for decades. But I can't support it, because if you're a Labour Party candidate and you're in rural Ireland and you go out with this, I'm sorry, it ain't going to work. Sorry, Robert, you spoke twice now, in fairness to you, or 3 times. It's not going to work, because firstly, I don't believe that this would work. I'm not sure even how constitutional it is, the way in which it's formed. But secondly, the issue is that you've got to work with people. You've got, I believe, many of the issues that was stated by Robert are scandalous as well. And they do need to be dealt with, and they can be dealt with. But you have to bring in local communities, you have to work with farmers, and you have to work with local people. And by the way, majoritarily, many of them aren't even farmers. And there are constitutional issues as well. By the way, I was the person who funded the Greenway for our councillor in Waterford. And when we met, I funded it twice actually, and the one in Mayo, and the fantastic one that's now beginning down in South Kerry, which will probably be the best Greenway in Western Europe. Isn't that right? So I'm 100% in favour of these. I've made hard decisions in my own political career as regards supporting some of these greenways as well. But just on that motion, because the way in which it's structured, I couldn't support it. And politically, I think from a Labour Party perspective, we can't. Motion number 62, rollout of broadband, one of my pet hobbies. You go in and out of villages and towns in rural Ireland and you actually can see what is going on when you have a situation where the privatisation, which began in the 1990s, the privatisation agenda works its way through. You go out one road and the broadband fibre is in place halfway out the road. You come back in the other road and the fibre is halfway in the road as well. And it literally just stops. And when it stops and it's gone. Nobody's coming back for years. And don't even start me about customer service, as Peter has spoken about it as well. Must be the worst of the worst. So from a broadband perspective in rural areas, and it's so negative because so many people are changing the way in which they work post-COVID, the way in which they're managing their lives, they're so dependent on it, and it's a mess, absolute mess, the way in which they've managed to roll this out. So 100% concur with that motion and would ask you to support it. Just a few things. When we talk about agriculture, we've got to remember that we are a party that supports agriculture. We are a party that needs to embrace farmers, particularly small farmers who are getting it very rough. We have to support a mechanism by which in agriculture in Ireland, small landowners, traditional families and small farmers are supported. I come from a farming community. I was born on a dairy farm. I come from that tradition in the Labour Party of farming people who were labour. And we need to support diversification. We need to support a wider set of actual financial supports for these people. And we also need to ensure that their voice, which is often lost with a number of the lobby groups who seem to always look after the larger holders and the larger farmers, that they have a voice. And I think there's political capital in us for that as well, if we can do it. When we talk about rural Ireland, though, rural Ireland isn't just this kind of icon. It's everywhere, and it's across everything. It's across the fact that we don't have enough Gardaí. I mean, there's no Garda station open at night in a town the size of Roscrea. It's about the fact that transport links, in many cases, are just tokenistic. It's about the fact that they're trying to currently ensure that, scandalously, the new nursing home, which Kathleen Lynch and myself helped fund in my hometown of Nina, is actually privatised and run by a private company, but not as a nursing home. And trust me, colleagues, I will fight that to the bitter end. It's about tourism. It's about broadband. It's about an encircling of all of these things and how we help these communities. And if I was going to, and we need to help these communities for future generations, like my 11 or 13-year-old daughter Ava here sitting in front of us, in front of me. Told you I'd embarrass you. She's here to take the pictures and the videos, the TikToks. But there is one thing which encircles all this, colleagues, and it's called the National Planning Framework. And we need to change this. We need to oppose what has been planned at the moment. It's good in principle, but bad in the way in which it's been put out. And I want to particularly acknowledge Councillor Dennis Leonard in Westmeath for his work in this and the way in which he's engaged with me over many years. Ireland 2040, the plan was pre-COVID. It was a political plan. It needs to be put in the ground. It's dead. Our lives and how we planned this country pre-COVID versus now is a complete different lifetime ago. So we need to think about things different. How we manage spatial planning, completely different. So many people who want to move from the conurbation of Dublin move into other parts of Ireland. We have a fantastic candidate up in Killinall called Michael Brennan. He's a first-time candidate for us in Tipperary. I want to acknowledge him here today. He will tell you the amount of people who are trying to move back to Tipperary. Issues of broadband, issues of school places, issues of all of that sort of stuff, and we acknowledge all of those. But there needs to be a plan in place for the following. There needs to be a plan for the regions. There needs to be a plan to allow Dublin breathe. There needs to be a plan to sort out housing, which is embellished in the middle of that. And if we can put forward a plan which is based around our regional cities, towns, villages, which actually is embracive, and in turn we can push that this is going to help the conurbation around Dublin, it's going to help the people of Dublin, it's going to help their lifestyles, help them breathe, well then I think there's political capital in that for us. And we can start, and I'll conclude with this, we can start with opposing the white elephant and the ridiculous plan now, post-COVID, to spend about 3 billion pumping water from the Shannon to Dublin. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll deal with that when we come to each of the motions, but thanks for that, John. So motion 60, which was from Dublin South Central, those, in order to hold a vote on motion 60, those in favour of motion 60 by show of delegate cards, those in favour? Those against? And abstentions? Okay, so motion 60 is carried. There was a proposal to refer motion 61 back, which is in the name of Clondalkin Rathcoole branch. Can I put that to the floor around referring that motion back, motion 61? That proposal, those in favour of the proposal to refer the motion back? Those against? Abstentions? Okay, that was easily carried. It was 3 were against that proposal. So motion 61 then has from Clondalk and Rathcoole branch has been referred back. And the last motion then, which is motion 62 in the name of Central Council, those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? So motion 62 is carried. Just to thank Deputy Alan Kelly for his contribution and his contribution as spokesperson for Rural Affairs and Agriculture. So just one quick announcement before we conclude this session of conference. There are 2 events currently ongoing at the minute. One organised by Labour Women and Women for Election, which is currently taking place in the Blue Room, and the other event, which is being organised by Labour Trade Unionists. Both those events are taking place up until 4:30. After that, then, there's going to be a canvassing workshop on in the Blue Room, and then at 4:30 to 5:30, there's the councillors' meeting and reception. But I've been asked by Dermot Lacey to stress all candidates and local area reps are invited to the local councillors' meeting and reception. So that's all candidates and local area reps are invited to attend that session at 4:30 to 5:30. And then a reminder for everyone to be back in the hall for 6 p.m. because we need to be in our seats for 6:25, so it's going to take a bit of time for the party leader's speech, and that is televised this evening. So that's the reason why there's I suppose a strict time frame of having everyone in the room by 6 p.m. So if everyone could make it back for 6 p.m, that'd be appreciated, in particular for the party leader's speech. And we obviously have our Dublin candidate, Éanna Reardon, opening that. So thanks, comrades, for everything, and we'll see you in the morning then for the next aspect of conference.
Well done. Got the evening off now, actually, don't you?